Thank you for twinkling the ivories for us there, Wendell, and welcome to episode 3 of the Champagne Comedy Podcast, where we talk about the best Australian comedy show from the 90s ever made, The Late Show, and other degeneration comedy tidbits. My name is Matt, and joining us today on the podcast is the usual Alison, Daniel, Kim, and Prue.
Hey.
Oh, there we go. There's a paid applause there. And especially for episode 3, we've made it to episode 3, which is fantastic. We have some special guests joining us. We have former ABC Brisbane radio presenter, media and comedy junkie, Spencer Housen, and his wife, national manager of giveit.org.au, Nikki Housen.
Hello. Welcome.
Good research, man.
Nice.
Well, anyway, I will just pay off the rest of the audience for him to go. Cool, there we go. And first of all, please tell everyone your connection with the DGen, The Late Show. How did you stumble upon this comedy troupe?
I was living in a share house in Brisbane, one of those when you have far too many people living in the house for fire safety laws, but I guess we won't go into that, how many people are actually living in each room.
Did any of them go on to become famous radio presenters?
No. Not in this house.
Okay.
No, different house.
Okay, all right. I wasn't referring to myself, by the way. No. I was referring to maybe was there any, it doesn't matter.
So very rare to actually be home alone, but home alone one night, we didn't have any furniture in the TV room, so you'd sit on the carpet with your beer to actually watch the telly, and flicked on the ABC, and this show came on, and it was like, oh, I like this. And then the next weekend just happened, it was on again. So exciting, opened up a whole new world. So thank you, Late Show.
What year was that? Was that 92? The first year of The Late Show?
Yes.
Because I don't know whether so Nikki and I started, well, we met on Anzac Day 1992. She thought I was an arrogant so-and-so, and we didn't maybe talk for the rest of that year.
That is accurate, yes.
Okay, good. I was just giving you some right of reply there, but I don't know that I needed to because it was against me. And then we started dating on the 4th of March, 93. And then very soon after that, I moved to Rockhampton. And eventually Nikki moved to Rockhampton as well the following February. But my distinct memory of the Late Show was from 93. And it was a show that we would watch 7 hours apart, 7 hours drive apart, and talk on the phone beforehand, talk on the phone after. And Birds of a Feather was the warm-up show, if I'm not mistaken. But I don't know. I'll be honest with you. I do not know whether I ever saw the show go out in 92. Clearly there are, because we've had the Champagne Comedy DVD box set for many years, there are some sketches from that first year that we would be very familiar with. But having watched episode 3 in preparation for today's podcast, I don't know that I've ever seen it before.
Well, it's a first time for everything, Spencer.
But the 93 series we would have watched, either apart or when we were lucky enough to be in the same place, we would have watched that whole series.
So The Late Show
together.
was a very important part of your early relationship.
Well, it was. No, absolutely.
It sounds like I can claim that I introduced you to it.
Yeah, claim it.
Yes.
Good work,
that's
Nikki.
And of course, we have become hooked on anything produced by those guys or anyone, associated with them over the years. And I've got Tony Martin on a poster behind me in my office, which is actually too much information here, but it is actually also our bedroom. So effectively, Tony Martin is on the wall of our
hilarious.
bedroom.
Is this where I get to say as well that my Jane Kennedy girl crush continues to this day?
That's a given.
Oh, fantastic.
So this is a Late Show romance. What a lovely story. I wonder if other people sort of connected and fell in love over the Late Show. If anyone else has got any stories listening, send them in. But yeah, that's lovely.
Yes, definitely. champagnelateshow@gmail.com. Send us your emails. Speaking of emails, we actually got a bit more feedback, believe it or not. We have 2, which I will make them very, very short. Glenn Diamond, my apologies if I pronounced your name incorrectly there, but he's reached out saying that he loves the podcast. And this is more or less a response to episode 2, where we're talking about the one-liner joke, and we've expanded on it about Club Yarrawonga. Now, that was a reference to Rob and Mick when they were breaking down the Olympic Village, and they just kept going on about Jimmy Hannon and his big teeth, his all teeth. So he said here that just some insight into the timeshare. His mum and stepdad bought a timeshare at Yarrawonga, and now this is where he's pronounced it Mulwala. So Yarrawonga Mulwala. That's how you pronounce it. I got it wrong. It was something. And anyway, he still remembers the Jimmy Hannon ads and the trip up there and the hard sell that day because it was a timeshare. His twin brother and him were about 13 at the time, and they thought it was pretty amazing. And living in Victoria, anywhere on the Murray was a popular holiday destination, particularly the pre-pokies 80s. And in addition to the timeshare condominiums, they made this exotic and fair step up from the usual caravan parks. His mum and his stepdad got totally sucked in, but they did have many happy holidays up there, and they got a good use out of it. I don't know whether I should say that line because if they're still running, I'll skip that part. Something to do with maintenance fees and all that other stuff. But the final sting on the tail for them was they had to pay a couple of $1,000s to transfer it after his mum had passed away because the title was lost, and they had a pretty bad nightmare trying to set all that out. Other than that, they had great memories of that time of Club Yarrawonga. Good on you, Glenn.
Good background info.
And yeah, so and also the second email is pretty much the same, but for someone else from Ross McPhee, and he's saying that he's enjoying the podcast and the Late Show made his last year of high school more bearable and life in general back then. So,
I agree. Yep, I was in year 10 and 11 at the time, so that was definitely, and even going into year 12, we were still quoting season 2 stuff or season 1 stuff right up till probably university days. Or that's when I started the Champagne Comedy website. So, yes.
Yep, since 1996, Kim.
That's right. And I should add the forum is back online. Yay! After several months of being offline. So if you want to delve into the memories and search for old bits of information, and if you ever were on the forum, you might be able to search through some old posts and relive some memories.
And this forum existed way before Facebook and Twitter and all the other social communications out there, really.
Yeah,
That's
it was 2003. Yeah, all the old posts are there. So March 2003, which was actually before MySpace, believe it or not. So there are a lot of old things on there.
Well done.
Just to add to that Jimmy Hannon thing, because Ross met Jimmy Hannon when he appeared at the 8th anniversary celebrations of his local shopping centre. He drew his name out of
the 8th anniversary.
Yeah.
And was he spruiking the timeshare at the shopping centre as well?
Well, this is the brilliant part. He drew his name out of a barrel when he entered a competition. The prize was a trip to Port Phillip Bay on the Spirit of Victoria, a short-lived catamaran service.
What?
Yeah, apparently there was something to do with the Spirit of Victoria. So any of you Victorians out there know anything about that in the 90s? I'm guessing
it's just so weird to win a trip to Port Phillip Bay. That's like winning a trip to Bass Strait or the Gulf of Carpentaria. Like, what? It's not very specific.
And a lot of feedback on Twitter as well. Daniel Hopmans informs us that here we go. This is for you, Alison, in regards to the Tony and Mick when they did postcards, and it was to a Star Trek convention.
Yep.
Does that ring a bell? Yep. That the segment didn't go to air because of Tony and Mick going to the Star Trek convention only to be harassed and kicked out.
Right.
That was highlighted. Yeah, they highlighted that it's on Martin Malloy Eat Your Peas album, disc 2, track 21, Wrath of Nutbags.
Yeah,
so
that's probably why we all knew about it.
Yeah. I dug it out, and yeah, they said that they got hassled by various people who that they'd slagged off on Martin Malloy or whatever, people who liked things that they'd slagged off, but they said the worst were the Star Trek fans. and I'm thinking, when I heard that, I was thinking, what an innocent age, because the 90s was, because this is well before the culture wars. You know, these days, you know, you say anything vaguely political and you'll have the other side will just hammer you on social media and really, really go at you in a very, very nasty way. But back then it was just a bunch of Star Trek fans who probably weren't that dangerous, to be honest. So,
words hurt, innocent.
Well, I don't know. Maybe they would all get together in their suits and intimidate them or whatever. But it just seems a bit less frightening than a bunch of QAnon people, for example. So.
And also a big shout out to the Great Australian Pods website for featuring us. I did not submit that. It was just up there. And I just went, yay, we're being promoted on another podcast website. So thank you so much for that. And that's pretty much it.
We're getting noticed. It's good.
Yeah, exactly. So please, subscribe on iTunes. We're also on Google Podcasts now after having a fight with them for a couple of weeks. So apologies for any Google podcast users out there. We're finally up there and you can subscribe away and download and eat up your bandwidth.
Yeah, you can even ask your Google Home.
I think, exactly. Yeah, you can just say play Champagne Comedy Podcast,
voila.
And
it does do it. I tried it. Yeah. Hopefully it'll still keep doing it after episode 4.
We're not legal for if your speaker blows up or catches on fire, so that's not our fault there. I must mention before go on about we're losing John Fay the last few days ago. So who is known for carrying the Olympic Games, really, the Sydney 2000 Games, and known in the Late Show.
Getting it over the line, yeah.
Yeah.
He did everything.
Yep, that famous jump.
I'll do that. Oh, yeah, I got that one.
Yeah, he was even bodyguard for Prince Charles at some point, wasn't he?
Oh, he was too, wasn't he?
If it weren't for the Late Show, I doubt that we
would remember John Fay.
Exactly. Yeah. When he died this week, I would have just been like, oh, yeah, former New South Wales Premier died. But instead, straight away, I went to YouTube to watch the Late Show.
The Olympics. Yeah.
That was the one thing I thought of straight away.
There's a really great documentary on Kathy Freeman on iView at the moment. And in there, you'll see Juan Antonio Samaranch announcing the winner is Sydney. And it just makes you think of the Late Show.
He doesn't.
He goes.
I highly recommend that.
So other than that, this episode we're going to be talking about season 1, episode 3, which was broadcast on Saturday, August 1, 1992. Now, Daniel, do you have any tidbits on what was on during that time or in the lead up?
I've also got, there was a cover story, in fact, for the Age Green Guide, showing the D-Gen cast above the headline "Sensitive Degeneration Exclusive." And it's a very long article. I'm not going to read all of it, obviously, but the intro goes, they're topical, occasionally tasteless, intelligent but not smug, and they're sensitive. John Mangan drags the D-Gen reluctantly into the limelight. It's an interview that was carried out at the State Swimming Centre, where the group was shooting a whole bunch of sketches, a few of which we've seen already. Like wet towel flicking being an Olympic event. They really had their hackles up about the word undergraduate, which came up in a few reviews, mainly because of their beginnings with the previous series on the ABC. Rob, for instance, tells us about some of the feedback that came from the audience. Obviously, it was in a much simpler time before everybody was able to hate tweet. So he said one caller to the station said it was as funny as a bucket of mud. Another rang up on the first night to say the whole show wasn't working. That was at 10:02 p.m. We were only halfway through the first sketch.
That's really harsh.
Oh, yeah. Serial complainers.
So they also addressed that there wasn't much publicity for this new series. And that their departure from Triple M Breakfast was low-key, their sign with the ABC was low-key. They gave up a cover story on TV Week to speak exclusively to the Green Guide, which is kind of odd, I think. I don't know what sort of thing they would be doing on the cover of the TV Week, maybe a bit of a John O'Connor point and laugh, I don't know.
Maybe because so they could slag off TV Week, because that TV Week was often referenced in the Late Show, wasn't it? And in this episode, in fact, there's a reference right at the end to TV Week in relation to a certain television critic, but we'll get to that later, perhaps.
It's like Kim's holding up
I hadn't thought of that. Yeah.
You can't really see what I'm holding up. I'm holding up a Rebecca Elmaloglu is on the cover of this particular TV week, and then you've got this one here where Sophie Lee makes an appearance.
Oh,
So, yeah, Georgie Parker was probably on one of the other ones that I haven't got here.
Are they significant dates, those issues that you've got there, Kim?
Well, they're in September 1992. I just don't know why I randomly have those 2 issues. I used to collect a lot of magazines. So these ones are the ones that relate to episodes that are further on in season 1. But you get the general idea. I think there are some Robert Fidgen cartoons in those ones as well. So we can talk about him later.
Excellent.
And those would have been the ones from long ago. I mean, TV Week nowadays, it seems like there's only ever home and away stars on the covers these
well, that's
days.
what it was like back then.
It would have been a lot
It was
more.
a terrible
then.
magazine.
That's why they always highlighted the fact it was either Georgie Parker or Kim
It was
Wilson.
kind of a no-brainer that
This
they
one's
went
got-
to the Green Guide, because at least that's journalism. And
It's a better fit for them, definitely, the Green Guide. Yeah.
I suppose there's
Yeah.
a good question though. Why didn't they want to maybe go for that big, national coverage on TV Week where everybody could see it and know about the show? That seems odd, but maybe they wanted to roll out low key and be discovered.
Well, see, one of the things Santo says, the problem with doing publicity is that it gets in the way of writing jokes. We enjoy making the show and putting it on air. People can decide for themselves by watching whether they like it or not.
Mm-hmm.
That's true Santo right there too.
Yeah, high clap, Santo. That was a good call.
Yeah.
And even Tony elaborates further. He says, when we did our shows at Channel 7, we did a 46-minute special, not even an hour. It had been written in about 2 weeks. We were driving up King Street one day and saw a massive billboard for it and thought, oh, it's not that good. That's too big a billboard for 46 minutes of jokes. So, yeah, they're sort of, I think they're also just a bit publicity shy as well.
Yeah.
We've also seen some of their fashion sense in this episode that we're going to chat about. So maybe, there's no glam in there to be putting on the front page of a magazine.
Definitely not.
If we can see what Tony and Mick are wearing in this intro, and just imagine that on the front of TV.
I just
Week.
can't remember what they wear. I don't
Yeah.
I think I must have a filter for it. Yesterday I saw Costa on Gardening Australia wear 2 flannelette shirts. So one over the other.
The double flannel, not the double flannel.
flannel. So I'm like, the Late Show was looking fine.
That's not a look, double flannel. It's not like double denim, which is a look. Double flannel is not a look.
I'll send you a link to the show. I mean, it was amazing.
Yeah, please do. Yeah.
Well, speaking of fashions, Jane sort of throws Tom under the bus a bit. Jane says, you should see what Tom Glasner wears. He can make jokes about people who wear brown jumpers because he wears them himself. We are all uncool people.
Yeah, well, he's the one wearing the brown. They're cords, aren't they? They're brown pants. He's doing the whole man spreading thing in this episode. That's when you talk about what they're wearing. All I can see is Tommy G's crotch.
His legs are exceptionally widely spaced apart on that beanbag.
Yeah, I have the note.
Slightly.
I wouldn't want to go on a train with him next to me.
No, I'm just going to say, Tommy G always seems to dress a bit like George Negus did in that era when he does the news desk. He's got kind of tweedy jacket and, all that sort of thing. So
All that brown.
yeah, he is quite daggy, I think, as a dresser.
And another thing that came out of this article, which I thought was interesting, is that the deal between the D Generation and the ABC was initially to do 10 shows, and then assuming that all was well, the series may be extended to 22 weeks. So it wasn't, it wasn't a done deal. So, I would say maybe pay attention to what, comes along in the next 7 or so shows, because obviously there was something in there that the executives liked in order to go, let's have another year and a half of it.
That's a really interesting comment, actually, because that explains why they are so annoyed about the bad criticism they're getting. I mean, of course you'd be annoyed, but, they're really, really annoyed at the end of this episode about it. And it's because they think this is going to cancel the show, basically, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was really harsh, like Tony says at the end of the episode. It's like we go out live. We've had 2 episodes. Like I said in a previous week of this podcast, it was just really not nurturing at all. The critic could have said something to just keep them going with a little bit more buoyancy, but they just sunk them. It was horrible.
The critics, I think, don't get the show. I think it's too young and too new and too weird and too experimental for them, and they're wanting something smoother and more polished in a sort of late night comedy show, you know, and they're not getting that, and they don't understand and they can't comprehend it, and they can't say anything nice about it because it feels wrong to them. But, you know, who was proved right?
Yeah.
But it is fundamentally undergraduate, you know, and even like we watched a bit of episode 2 as well as the episode 3 in preparation for this. And I remember saying to Nikki, this is kind of like what you'd expect high school students to do in media class, some of these sketches. But the fact is that if you were of the same age or around the same age, then you're going to get it. But if you're a 50-year-old reviewing this stuff, and heck, I'm almost 50 now. So, you know, if I didn't love this stuff already, you know, watching Tommy take Jane to the Greyhounds, I would say that is just not funny. Also, it's just not funny. And I'm sort of preempting our discussion probably, but you can see where the critics would have perhaps not got it.
Yeah, I think that call about undergraduate is just a nothing. It's like, what does that mean, undergraduate? Well, it just means that it appeals to young people,
such a
maybe, or, you know, people who are currently studying.
Well, obvious. It means obvious jokes, doesn't it? That's what I get.
I mean,
obvious jokes and a license for toilet humor.
Yeah, I think it's a cop out.
Yeah, it's a lazy term. It's so overused. Basically, anyone doing sketch comedy who's been anywhere near a university always gets called undergraduate, and it's quite an unfair term, I think.
And the article ends with Mick looking up at Tom, who has just returned from shooting a sketch in which he wore a set of false breasts. "How did it go?" he asks. "I don't know, Mick," Tom says. "It was a bit undergraduate."
Exactly. And also evidence of why Tom G's one of the best cast members, I think, and certainly one of the best writers, because he can just come up with stuff just instantly. He's that good.
Yeah, he's a genius. I didn't, like I've said it a million times, I didn't fully appreciate him until I was much older. And one of the times I realised it was at a recording of Thank God You're Here. He kind of was the crowd warm-up. I mean, there was Brian Nankervis, obviously, but he would come out and sort of just rattle off all these jokes before he went and sat on his daggy little judge's table and completely relegating himself to a nothing spot. But the stuff that he did beforehand that never went to air was just pure genius. And it was like, Tommy G, why are you not a stand-up comedian? It's a crime.
Yeah. Was one of the jokes no cameras, but what was it? No flash cameras, but cheap cameras are okay. Was that one of the jokes? I think so.
We'll go really quickly to what was up against season 1, episode 3. Now, because we've got Spencer House and Brisbane Radio Royalty as our guest, I decided to go and look up what was on TV in Brisbane. It just so happens that it's mostly the same as usual Melbourne. So on Channel 7, we had the Barcelona Olympics. According to the guide, there was yachting from 9:15 p.m. until 2:30 a.m.
Wow.
I don't know if that would have been the whole time, but yeah, I don't know. I'm not much of a yachting fan, so I probably
imagine that in 1992 there would have been no on-deck camera or anything. It just would have been this chopper going on.
And one channel.
Exactly.
One channel of Olympics.
One channel.
Yeah.
Bloody hell, yeah. One channell. We take it for granted these days, don't we?
Yeah, we do, yeah. On Channel 9, Hey Hey It's Saturday had guests Randy Crawford, Rhonda Birchmore, and according to the listing here, as a guest, Mr. Dobalina.
Mr. Dobalina. Yeah.
Amazing.
Well, see, I don't think it would have been the actual, like, unless there was an actual Mr. Robert Dobalina who was trying to cash in on the newfound fame.
I definitely would have been.
I assume they're talking about the.
It would have been the
either that or Del the Funky Homo Sapien singing that song. Yeah.
It would have been the odd 2 minutes that it was worth watching Hey Hey. I'm sorry to offend you, Matt. I know you're a big fan.
That's all right. I'm only a fan so I can take the piss out of it.
And then after that was a trio of movies starring Bill Cosby and Sidney Poitier. We had Uptown Saturday Night, followed by Let's Do It Again and A Piece of the Action. They all got, 2.5 stars, 3 stars, and 2.5 stars respectively. So a top night's viewing there up against the Olympics, of course.
They're really not trying with that selection, aren't they?
Let's do it.
Yeah.
No.
Maybe they
No,
were
well,
worried about the
there's
late
not-
show.
Well, I think, again, because everybody would have been watching the Olympics, it seems like everybody else, apart from Channel 2, of course, was running movies. On the Win Channel, they had a movie called Murder by Death.
Great movie. Love that.
Yeah, it's got quite a lot of star power in there. Eileen Brennan, Truman Capote, James Coco, Peter Falk, Alec Guinness, David Niven, Peter Sellers, Maggie Smith, before she was a Dame probably. On Channel 10, we had Braddock Missing in Action 3, starring Chuck Norris, and it just happened to be directed by Norris's brother, Aaron Norris.
Again, a quality selection.
Well, I suppose if you didn't like that, there was a bit of quality on SBS. They were showing, of course, a foreign film called Mon Oncle.
Yeah, Jacques Tati. Yeah.
And it's an Oscar winner as well. Best foreign film for 1958.
Yeah, SBS is on fire in 1992.
And back to Channel 2. The lead-in was again Smith and Jones. And after the late show, you had Aspel and Company. The guests were Harry Enfield, someone called Marion Margulies, but I think that's meant to be Miriam.
Yeah, I
Margulies.
think
Oh
so.
yeah, it'd be Miriam, all right.
And I would say if she was anything like she is on the Graham Norton show, she would have been a good watch on Aspel and Company, I think.
Yeah.
And then an Irish tenor who's in the listing here as Jose Flock, but his name's actually Joseph Locke.
Maybe it was the influence of the Barcelona Olympics.
I
This is
think you were
possibly-
right.
Possibly they
Had
didn't
a
know
couple.
who he was. And then after Aspel and Company, Rage had a B-52 special.
Oh, fantastic.
Oh, I would have been taping that.
Brilliant.
Yeah, it was pretty much movies, the Olympics, and the Late Show. Yeah.
You guys discussed Michael Aspel a couple of weeks ago, didn't you?
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew no one else in my world would have discussed Michael Aspel in the last couple of weeks. And so when I was listening, and this is the problem with listening to podcasts as opposed to radio, when you're listening to radio, you can phone in or text in. When you're listening to a podcast, you can't. Michael Aspel was eaten by the big kitten in The Goodies.
Yes.
Oh, awesome.
Oh,
He was the reporter that the cat came and
No, he was
stomped
squashed.
on
He
in
was
the-
squashed. He wasn't
Squashed,
eaten.
yeah, that's right.
He was
Squashed in
squashed
the
with the
that's
foot,
right.
yeah.
In The Goodies, yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
all right. We'll try and work on being a late night podcast. Therefore we try to get people to call in. It works for Tony Martin somehow. I
Yeah,
don't know how
yeah.
we'll get-
How does that work?
So, are you ready to move on to the first sketch of the episode?
Yep.
Sure.
All right.
Notebooks at the ready.
Fantastic. All right. Well, the opening sketch is a simple image of Tommy G as Jeff Crow from Jeff Crow Motors, with Tony ripping in to the current wave of nationalism because of the Olympics.
Yeah, I was too lazy to look this up, but I'm pretty sure that the still of Tommy G as Jeff Crow Motors is from the Degeneration series on Channel 2.
I believe that too.
Yeah.
I didn't. I was too lazy as well, but it looked so familiar.
Yeah, and that
Tommy
if
G
you can
looks
find it,
even
viewers.
thinner than he is in the Late Show, so it must be from the 80s.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and he had a full beard. And
Jeff-
if you
Jeff
can
Crow
find
was
that
a-
sketch, it's hilarious. You've got Tommy G on the ground doing a full 360 on his shoulder.
Oh,
It's amazing.
yeah. That is brilliant, that sketch. Was it a running series of sketches or was it just the one? I can't remember.
Oh, I can't remember either.
Anyway, it was great. And he's going around on his shoulder on the ground going, Aussie, 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 isn't he? Like,
Other than the opening titles, we have the opening monologue, which has Mick and Tony drawing the short straw to introduce the show, and they'd rather host Bloopers, Bleeps, and Blunders by Don Rickles and Ed McMahon. Now, I looked that up, and I don't know whether he said that as an accident, where it was Bloopers, Bleeps, and Blunders, because as per the TV guide, and also on YouTube, where I found some clips, it was Foul Ups, Bleeps, and Blunders, which had Don Rickles and Steve Lawrence.
Now, see, I thought he might have been referencing. There was also another bloopers series that was hosted by Dick Clark, I think, which had Ed McMahon as
yeah.
well. Because I'm very sure that it made it to our shores here whenever there was a gap in the Channel 10 schedule.
It did, yeah.
I remember a lot of those on 90s television, and they were always called something like Bloopers, Bleeps, and Blunders in slightly different but there were British ones as well as the American ones. But if we can just go back slightly to the titles, do you notice this is the first week where there's big audience cheers over the titles?
Oh, this was such a great studio audience. I'm giving this studio audience 10 out of 10. I'm going to rate them every
They
week.
were very lively, weren't they? Yeah.
Here it is: TV's bloopers and practical jokes. That was the Dick
That's
Clark
right,
and
yeah.
Ed McMahon. Yeah, that was shown, I think, on Channel
The
7.
precursor to YouTube.
Yes.
No wonder we're stuck with YouTube now. We watched all this shit when we were growing up.
Yeah, Mick and Tony were talking about the UN task force findings being displayed in a manila folder with Saddam's super gun aimed on the set of the Yahoo Serious movie.
Yeah, that was
Quite right,
great gag.
Yes.
Yeah, and Saddam's mustard gas is available in original or new hot and spicy.
Yeah.
And
There's such serious topics at this time,
Yeah.
just after the war.
Yeah.
That's right.
And yet they make humor, and mostly I think that those jokes, the Iraq jokes and the Saddam Hussein jokes, mostly actually do work. Whether it's hard to imagine what it was like at the time watching those jokes, but the job's lost because the bottom falling out of the effigy business. I mean, I laughed out loud at that. That's great, and yet it's so dark.
My memory of that first Gulf War was that it didn't go on for very long, and it was sort of this tiny thing that was way away from us, and we sent 3 ships or something, and it was a kind of rubbish little war over there. It wasn't like a serious war like after 9/11. That was a serious war that really scared people around the world, whereas the Gulf War was just like, oh, there's this thing happening, we've sent 3 ships, so you could kind of do jokes about it, whereas comedians I think really struggled to do jokes about after 9/11 and all that, because that war seemed genuinely scary.
But that's a product of its time too, because like we didn't ever see the impact of a bomb hitting a village back then. It was all a Western viewpoint. So
And the internet's brought us all closer together these days, and back then it just seemed so far away to have all this stuff happening in the Middle East.
It was the first sort of TV full on TV war, though. Like in Australia,
I guess
my
so.
recollection is that Channel 10 took CNN a lot of the time. And my collection of goodies episodes recorded onto VHS, all the ad breaks had Des McWilliam, who was the Brisbane Channel 10 newsreader, who lives across the road from us, by the way, apparently, although we never see him, with the promos for the war, for the news, which is all about the Iraq War. So all the way through these goodies episodes are promos for the Iraq War coverage on CNN on Channel 10.
Yeah, I do remember that when I was a kid writing in my diary, there's going to be this war, and we could be in this World War or something in it, and I guess it was quite scary. I was only 13 or so at the time, and then this second wave of the potential nuclear weapons, and the Late Show just made it just sort of the funny side, and that's really what made it for me, I guess. Yeah.
I was more interested in the Yahoo Serious movie coming up.
was that young Einstein? What was it?
No,
No,
Reckless
that
Kelly.
was Reckless Kelly. Yeah.
Oh, Reckless Kelly, right.
It's right next to me down my bookshelf, but I can't be bothered getting it. I don't really want to show it. It's embarrassing.
Don't bother.
No,
Hey, I
show
got
it.
out my blue healers last time, so I don't know why.
And
by the
he's
way-
still recovering from that weightlifting as well.
Oh, threw my back out. The next segment was the news desk with Tommy G, and Barcelona rocked after. Oh, this is the classic Tommy G cutaway joke, which was the Barcelona rocked after missing target, which had the Barcelona arrow shooting off in the distance and instantly blowing up a building.
Quite possibly from the Iraq War.
Yeah.
Yes. There's a lot of war jokes, definitely.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder then what an Iraqi, might think of watching this back now.
Yeah.
It's very much from our point of view. That's a hilarious joke, as is the barbecue one later in the episode.
Yeah, we were just desensitized, or no, perhaps just completely naive.
Well, that's just propaganda. That's war. That's the sign.
We probably weren't sensitized to begin with.
Exactly, yeah.
We had that Saddam and the Kiss Me Quick pin button, just to explain the visual that they showed straight after that, which Saddam ends up greeting another gentleman. Also, the Olympic diving marred by a freak accident, and splice in the shark inflation rate at a 30-year low. And John Dawkins.
The great thing about that gag was, and there was another example of this later in the episode, just the the detail and the convincing nature of the edit, from the chart being held up by, who was it, the treasurer, to what just looked like the same chart, very convincing, and then had the kids drawing next and whatever. And later we had the same thing with the American vet's certificate on the wall behind the American vet. Like, just really nice detail. Yeah.
It's like what you see now with Trump, and although what he holds up is usually silly anyway, but when you just cut away and there's some ridiculous thing that he's holding up.
That's right. This was Deepfake 92 stuff.
And the photocopy of the bum. I don't know what you do now.
That's all I've got written down. That photocopy of the bum. We need to explore this. That was the grossest bum I've ever seen.
It was like a couple stunt butt from episode 1.
Fully covered in hair like an ape. Oh, I never want to see that photocopy of a bum ever again.
I was going to say, at least it was black and white, yes.
Yeah, you don't want to see that fruit bowl, that's for sure.
And unfortunately, somebody in the props department had to make that. Somebody had to request that.
That's good.
Somebody had to go, I'm making this for comedy.
No, I think it was one of the cast.
They probably knew who already had a few in their drawer.
All right.
Yeah, from the last Christmas party.
That's right.
All right, so a quick joke about Charles and Di celebrating their anniversary with a dinner in separate homes. So that was the dissolving of their relationship happening there. The Gillespie children are being smuggled out of the country. And then it cuts to Jason Stevens as a customs security guard trying to explain that, oh, no, nothing can get past us. And yet they just seamlessly
I remember that news story. It was really awful. And I actually think that Tommy G has really sort of nailed it in this jokey analysis, and particularly in the Gareth Evans bit coming up next. It's like, it's really appalling that they let this man take these children and that nobody stood up and helped this woman out. It was terrible.
The comedy around this story was harder for me to take, though, than the war themes. So this one I actually watched and I went, oh, can you say that?
I actually think that this time the comedy is kind of really doing good. It's unlike the war stuff, which is a little bit flippant. This is like really nailing it, really nailing the problem, particularly when he addresses Gareth Evans and Rob, which we'll get to, is like hilarious. But he's just sort of blaming that, that's an issue for the family court, which is essentially just like, we don't give a shit. You know, where it's not an issue for the family court, mate. It's international borders. It's all this stuff. What the hell are you doing? And so I actually think that the comedy was really highlighting the problem, probably better than the news did at the time.
Well, at the time we saw a lot of the mum story, Jacqueline Gillespie, because of course she was here in Australia and was the focus for a lot of those current affairs shows, and we saw a lot of her story.
Yeah, it is a bit of a tragic way because it does continue on where it gets brought up again. So I haven't watched episode 4 yet, but I'm pretty sure that it might come up there again. But as Prue was saying, this is where we see Rob as Gareth Evans, the foreign minister at the time. And I counted 7 times he mentioned family court. Bit of an awkward one now, unfortunately, with because it was funny but also serious at the same time.
Yeah, I think it's I think they've done it well myself. That's the view I had. But also, just to go back to the comedy completely, Rob, I think, is starting to show signs of that thing that we were talking about when he's doing his impressions, where he just sort of takes it a little bit too far, and you can see he's just nodding and sort of getting into whatever affectation he wants to tease out of the impression.
The nodding is brilliant, isn't it? And then he realizes he's overdoing it. He said, do you notice how he does that?
Yeah. Which is hilarious.
He just goes full.
This is actually a pre-recorded interview, because then, of course, minutes later he's Bruce McAvaney, and there is a weird sort of glitch where Tommy G and Rob on the video don't quite match up, but you hardly notice it. But yeah, it's funny that he would be sitting there in camera just going to go, you notice how he does that?
I did like the Cadbury Roses reference. Thanks for stealing the kids from the missus, if you remember that jingle. Thank you very much. Thank you very, very, very much.
Very, very, very much.
Yeah, I know. That perhaps does make it seem like they're taking the story lightly, but it was funny.
Yeah.
Rob Sitch doing impressions, though. I could just watch a whole show of him just doing impressions.
It's one of many. It's one of many. Now we've got the helicopters used as gunships in Papua New Guinea, which were, saying that could be Aussie, and which now this is a visual joke, and the proof being having Moonies stuck to the window as well as Fluffy Garfields as well. Now the Moonies, man, they were like huge in the 80s.
This was actually the point where I wrote down, these are very serious stories that they're making fun of.
That they just put very silly jokes on, yeah.
Yeah, but I loved the gag. And then the other thing that I noticed at this point was how quaint the newspaper stories are that have been cut out and then put on a card and then filmed, or however they've done it. Which, of course, these days you just wouldn't see that. It just would not look that way.
No, because it would be a screenshot from the internet story.
That's right, yes.
Well, the next part was the start of Michael Jackson, really, of suing a UK paper for saying that his face was disfigured. Now, this joke, you can see why this kind of flopped, and you don't really see it on any of the DVD best bits or anything.
Absolutely died in the ass.
This was a shocker. I hated this joke. Oh my God.
To everyone listening, what had happened was it was Jason dressed up as Michael, but you couldn't see his face. He was in a silhouette. And then when they tried to turn up the light, the lamp didn't work, and it was just a backlight. And it looked like that he had a Freddy Krueger face mask on, but it did not work. And Tommy just tried to move on. It's like, all right, that joke didn't work.
Yeah,
move on.
Tommy had the sense to go, all right, next item.
Yeah.
I think it failed because Jason was doing this weird thing where he was miming turning on the lamp, and the studio light was supposed to come on behind him, but it didn't. So he mimed it again. And it was one of those ones where the audience just gets distracted by going, what are you doing? Are you miming?
Is that meant to be like that?
Is that not a real lamp? And then you see the stupid mask and you go, oh, mate, not worth it.
It didn't help that it was quite a weak joke as well. It's one of those sketches where there's a lot of build-up for one joke, and the joke happens to be really weak, so it just died.
Yeah, it's unfortunate but that's the beauty of live TV, really. So if a joke fails, it's like, all right, well, that's what makes it even more funny. But no, move on.
Move on.
As they say, they can't all be winners.
No, they can't. So the next part being the photographer Mark Stupane passing away, and now this is more of another visual joke of going through all his best photography work, including Tommy G's family holiday photo at Bermagui.
Again, they're showing their dagginess here. They really let their dag fly, I think.
Why is Bermagui that bad? I've been told it's great.
Is it? Well, there'll be another reference, of course, to Bermagui in season 2. It's
quite bronze, really, when you think about it. And next story being 3 UK athletes tested positive for drugs at the Olympics, and they're prepared to whinge about it. So there's a bit of a UK whinging pom joke, really. And Rob Sitch with his famous Bruce McAvaney impression at Barcelona.
Yay!
Brilliant.
I love that in this impression, Rob calls out that bad Michael Jackson joke as well.
What does he say?
And I think it's the beginning of, he just goes, nice Michael Jackson joke.
Nice Michael Jackson joke
like,
there, Tommy. That's right. And I could go on and on.
And I will.
And I will.
And I
I'm
will.
going to mention the athletes' names at random.
So this is one of the most quoted sketches of or one of Rob's impressions, really. But this is where the one that was in the DVD that everyone knows. So this is where it originated from. Season 1, episode 3.
So here's my question about this Bruce McAvaney appearance. I'm guessing they only had one auto cue in that studio because I was distracted by the fact that Rob, as Bruce, was reading slightly off camera. And Tommy G was using the auto cue. Presumably they only had it on one camera.
He does look down, doesn't he?
I don't know if they only had one, but I reckon that auto cue would have been ancient because you can see it really failing Robin Santo in all of the Graham and the Colonels across the entire 2 series of the Late Show. So it's just obviously like a rotating thing that someone's turning with a knob. I don't know. It's crazy.
I always thought that was because they just start improvising around the sketch, and then whoever's running the auto cue can't keep up with the script. I've seen that before in when I've seen TV recordings. You know, if the comedian starts improvising on something that's on an auto cue, the auto cue operator just has zero idea of where to go.
In this case, this was an example
kind
of
fun.
like the athletes' names that Bruce McAvaney was saying he had to get right for the gag to work. So it was this long list in alphabetical order at one point. So he was definitely reading off a card.
And the pronunciation. It's all about the pronunciation being completely beautiful. Which it's sort of, it's a lovely impression because it's quite a homage to Bruce McAvaney, really.
Yeah, there's definitely no punching down in that. Yeah.
Very iconic. The news desk has wrapped up, and the next sketch is how to make a television commercial, and that is by using an annoying jingle. So if you subscribe to the podcast, I did release a little soundbite, which I'll play here.
Install a Rheem, on the hoist of hot water you've never seen. Rheem comes on. Steady, hot and strong. When you're all heated at the gong. Install a Rheem.
So that commercial, that Rheem TV commercial, had 3 guys in it doing that whole dance, install a Rheem. So from there, they've used that as a major Rheem parody.
Yeah, that was the ad that really stuck with me through the 80s and 90s. I can probably still sing it today. It's that era where you just have these jingles that get stuck in your head. And Rheem, when you think of hot water systems, you usually think of Rheem, right? And even though they were taking the piss out of it and saying these songs are so annoying and they'll go on and on and on, they actually are such an earworm that they stick with you forever. Yeah. And it was a successful campaign there.
All these years on, I did sing that jingle when I watched that clip. So it's, incredible how some things do just cement in your head. So well done to whoever wrote that and created that as an advertising gig at the time. Yeah, well done.
I really like the props as well. I mean, the hot water, the cylinders that fall on them. Very simple but effective.
This is a sketch that took me by surprise. I mean, obviously I've seen it a million times, but I was like, I have no memory of employ 3 dogs. Like I've got, this is like one of those hidden gems that we've never seen again.
It's the crappiest ad we've ever seen.
Now, I don't know if it went for all the other parts of Australia, but in Sydney, I know something that rivaled Rheem with a commercial, and that was Alcan. Did anyone have Alcan in their state?
Oh,
we are the boys from Alcan.
I don't remember having Alcan in Adelaide, but I did think of those ads as well, because the three dorks do look very similar.
Wasn't there a reference to the
Alcan
in the when they went to the shopping centre and the guy selling the carpets? What was that? They said something.
No, that was Carpet Cool.
I'm getting my ads confused now.
Cool, Carpet Cool, the experts in the trade.
Oh, see, Alison, you've been in London for 20 years, and you still remember
the same sort of thing, isn't it?
Carpet Cool,
Carpet Cool.
You know what? It's kind of like give me a child until they are 7. It's a bit like that.
And I loved how
someone who remembers the Carpet Cool ad. So
I loved how you dropped your voice lower when you sang that line as well.
Well, you've got to try and do it right.
So after the Rheem parody, Jason, Jane, and Santo read from the complaints book. So this is where from the episode last week, that was broadcast last week, where it had the Olympic swimmer exposing herself, really, and someone was accusing Jane of being the one who flashed, and so they pretty much explained how that sketch was set up.
Yeah, with Tommy G wearing the fake boobs. And that was actually something that I wondered about, like which cast member is wearing those fake boobs? Now we know. I noticed that this is one of the things where they start becoming more self-deferential, like they recall their own stuff more to take the piss out of it. And I think this is what really sets them apart and becomes their sort of calling card, is that they are the first to have a go at themselves, and it makes it so much more funnier, and you sort of feel like you're becoming more comfortable with the show at this point.
Well, it's how you create a club as well of viewers. I mean, the trick is to not ever make it difficult for a new viewer, obviously, but at the same time, it's all those sort of running gags, and referring back is part of that as well. Yeah.
They totally did do that, didn't they? They created a club, and it was have you seen The Late Show? And we all taped it and we all talked about it. And we never really talked about water cooler shows. That was an American term that hadn't really come in then, but we were all in the schoolyard repeating it to each other and doing that exact same sort of thing.
And like the Three Dorks, they come back later in this episode, but I'm guessing they come back later in the series as well. Like that's the perfect setup for a running gag, and that would just pop up presumably at some point later in the series. Some viewers would go, I remember the very first episode, but it didn't matter if you didn't see that first time that they appeared. But others would be like, I remember the first time they were on.
I don't actually think they do. The Dorks
Really?
are a one-off.
Well, they're later in this episode because they're the
yeah, and that was
right.
good.
Speaking of that, the next part was after explaining the fake boobs controversy, which was it seems like this could have been a news bit, like an appearance in a news sketch, being the UN meetup with Iraq with Alpha Camilleri as Saddam. But so it feels like that this
first appearance, isn't it?
Yeah, maybe.
It is on The Late Show. I think he might have appeared as Saddam in a few other ABC series from memory. I think it might have been The Big Gig.
What was his title? Was he a props coordinator?
He was in the props department at the ABC. So yeah, he probably would have organised the set of fake breasts.
Mail order.
Right.
I think it's probably more effective when you think of it in retrospect after so many years of them looking for those weapons of mass destruction. And at the time it was just early days, I guess, and they're basically looking for them and saying, where are they? Let's play that game. And then so they play hot and cold to try and find them. That's the running joke.
Yeah, I, of course, love anything with Tony and Rob. We see it a lot in Series 1, but less so in Series 2. So, yes, this is a pretty sort of weak
I love it.
sketch, isn't it? It's a bit staggy.
It falls a bit flat.
Yeah, but I like it. And I think it's got great payoff with the warmer, freezing, that kind of old game. Yeah, I think in 1992 we actually thought that they would find them.
So straight after that was a serious tone to the next sketch, which was a judge going through the whole court of someone being tried for murder. And then, bam, the reveal. Guess who it is? The Ream guys.
We're the guiltiest men you've ever seen.
Yeah, and with the classic, we hit the bits in sacks, which is a brilliant thing.
Rob delivers that line very well.
Yeah, it's very dark topic, this, but
again,
it's funny.
Just ending on pure silliness.
Now, as we go into this is one of the favorites, really. We briefly mentioned this in episode 2, where Jane and Tommy G go on a date.
Well, hang on, you had the microphone failure first. If we're going to do this,
yeah.
Oh yeah, actually, I did write that. Jane lapel mic fail. Yes,
back to the beginning. Goes, yeah, that's right. And actually, the mic, whoever had that spare mic, actually, I mean, yeah, it felt long when you watch it, 5 seconds maybe, but they actually did get it to her very quickly.
I love Jane is just not phased at all. Just
Live
gets the handheld mic and just keeps going. What a champ! Because it was quite a long technical gap, wasn't it? It was like, well, we can't hear you. It's like people on Zoom these days on the mute. Yeah. It was well done. I think we also, as an audience, probably start to get used to, well, it is live. They're not bullshitting. This is legit. And they're doing great.
Yep. So does anyone want to talk about Tom taking Jane to the Greyhounds?
Ooh.
Yeah. What do they call this? Is this like a subterfuge or a red herring?
Yeah, just to distract us from the fact that she was actually going out with Rob. So I think at school we talked about this in episode 1. We all thought there was something going on with Jane and Tom, whereas in actual fact, it was actually Rob.
I mean, that was the same at my school, and the fact that they would do the countdown classics together as well kind of reinforced that. And there was, at the end of this episode, actually, do you notice that Jane puts her head on Tommy G's shoulder at one point? So I don't know. I mean, whether they'd planned that or not, it really made us all think that they might be a bit of a thing, but alas not.
Well, I hope that was the reason for that sketch, because comedy wasn't.
Not a fan, are you?
Not of that sketch. Sorry, Prue.
I have a long history with the whole Rob and Jane thing because I had like aunts and uncles and my parents tell me that Rob and Jane were an item in 1992, which is really interesting because you know how they are media shy, and like the only thing you'll ever get about it is maybe Jane saying we just started dating around then. And yet I had all these sort of older people who were about their age going, yeah, they're an item. So whether it was like, I still, and I was like, how, what do you mean? But then I'd take this information to school and nobody believed me for 3 years at least until
So
we were
Spencer,
like
why
in
did
Funky
you
Squad
dislike this
territory.
sketch?
Did anyone believe
Too
me?
close to home.
I'm sorry, was there a joke in
Weird.
it? I mean, the funniest joke was the flower.
Oh,
The
I have
flower.
a daisy. Oh.
where Tommy gives Jane a flower and she said, "Oh, I've got some of those." Oh,
Yes,
they're
I have
mine.
a daisy. Yeah, smashed on the floor. No, I really felt Jane's pain through the whole episode, and I really don't think that I was meant to, but I did.
Yeah, no, it's the low point of the episode.
I think the joke is that, you know,
For the effort, I mean, sure, they got 4 minutes out of it or thereabouts. Was it? Yeah, 5 minutes out of it. But think about this. They had to shoot at nighttime. Like, so the expense of the crew and working at nighttime, like, it did not pay. It was not worth
the
it.
joke is that it was a bad date. I think that's what it was. And yet he really sort of went for it. Like, you're going to love the greyhounds. And it's like, no, I don't want to go to the greyhounds.
Somehow I've got the feeling though that they might not have gotten permission from the Greyhound track that they went to. Like, it did seem a bit covert. It probably would have been just Santa.
Oh, definitely.
Filming,
Sitting in the back of the car with the handicap, going down Punt Road. I don't know. I don't really have a problem with it. I think it's fine. I think it's funny. Maybe it's something like they always used to do on the radio a bit, sort of taking the piss out of. It's like it's a classic Mick Malloy joke in a way, even though he probably didn't write this bit, but he's always sort of saying, come on, you'll love this. And it's like a shit night out for everyone involved except Mick.
Again, they're returning to their dagginess as the theme. So, yeah, going to the dish lickers and, you know, Tom getting a copy of the Australian Greyhound with Tony Lockett on the cover.
Well, you know, this is, though, as we segue into the next bit, just another example of just how much was in an hour of this program, because what followed was champagne comedy. I don't know whether you ring a bell when you actually hit something that genuinely is, but, you know, thank God it was saved by the next bit. That's all I can say.
Oh, yeah, the Barcelona newsreader games.
Yes.
Yes. The rating on how to pronounce Bach.
Oh, yeah.
Pronunciations.
Now, Spencer, this would be your forte, wouldn't it?
Well, I actually remember, I mean, this is obviously a hat tip to what SBS were doing at the time with Mary Kostakidis and George Danikian as the main readers, probably around that time, or maybe they had been. And I actually remember interviewing Mary Kostakidis probably within a year of this, probably even that year, for reading radio, or 4RPH as it was called at the time, where I was working community radio. And I asked her, like, how much effort goes into getting the pronunciations right of these names? Because if you watched SBS then, George Danikian especially, were just the guttural pronunciation was, I don't know if it was accurate, but it was to behold. And I remember her saying to me, "It's my job." And basically she knew I was sort of wanting to get into the media at that time. And she pretty much said to me, if you want it to be your job, you get the pronunciations right. That was her answer to that.
Can we hear a rendition from you, Spencer, or how you would do the intro?
No. Cultural appropriation in 2020? No.
Now, just before we move on, I'm just going to, just before we move on, I'm going to poke a bit of a hole in this sketch. In that the D-Generation are good at comedy, but they're crap at maths. Because you might remember that for each newsreader's pronunciation of Barcelona, they put scores along the bottom of the screen. They actually get the totals wrong for 2 out of the 3 newsreaders.
Probably do.
Yeah, Daniel Day is going to notice this.
I reckon that's intentional. I reckon that's
Really?
Yeah, they're always doing things like that. Like, there's a sketch coming up later with Tony and his gran, and like the funniest part of that sketch is the credits that go really quickly up the screen. So I reckon that's intentional.
You reckon they didn't get those titles on just to piss off pedants like me, or?
Are you keeping a list of all these questions for when you get these guys on the podcast? I hope you are. And question 47 in episode 14.
Yeah, those Trekkies will have nothing on us. But yeah, just for completeness, the Channel 7 guy, it should have been 19.5 instead of 19. The Channel 9 guy was correct, and Jane doing the SBS newsreader should have been 38.3 instead of 37.3.
Oh, I'm glad the results the same. That could have been quite a scandal. You don't.
It would have driven all the Warnickies out there really angry and writing into the Green Guide later on. Sorry, Warnicki joke from episode 2. So we're still continuing.
Ross Warnicki, was it?
Ross Warnicki, yeah.
So in '92, very quickly, I'll throw this in. I was at aforementioned Reading Radio, and I did a program called The Box, and I read from the Green Guide every week on 4RPH, as it was in Brisbane. So anything written in the Green Guide, including that article, Daniel, that you mentioned before, I probably read out on radio in 1992, even if I wasn't watching the show.
Well, I really got you as a good guest, didn't I? All right, so straight after the newsreader, we have now Santo as Colin Slater and his Academy of Martial Arts, and with Jane asking Santo the questions, and with the Martial Art Academy being located above his panel beating shop.
Yeah.
And the Australian martial arts that are highlighted here are funny. The gay bashing joke is another low in terms of the terminology. We wouldn't.
No.
these days.
Yeah, that was
in the
terrible.
Denim Belt, yes.
Yeah, I feel with the joke like that, they're not trying to endorse it. Really.
Endorsing it. It's a reflection of a real phrase that people used at that time, unfortunately. It would be done differently today, that joke, definitely. I also think this might be the first reference to Jane, you are a beautiful woman, or Jane, you are a beautiful girl, because there's quite a lot of that in subsequent episodes. Yeah. There's that.
That's right. Yeah.
That's a running gag, trying to distract Jane. Yeah.
I've got a feeling they do that sometimes just to try and throw her off her game, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's the history, of course. She used to read the news and they would distract her from it.
I'm very glad that she
What are
does
you
remember.
staring at? What are you staring at?
This is quite funny, this whole, you want to go? You want to go?
Yeah, well, the classic Oz.
What are you staring at?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was called chesting. Well, one of them was anyway.
Yeah. Probably better thought of these days as shirt fronting, as a former PM might have put it.
Have you noticed the funniest part of this bit is where, at the end of it, Jane starts laying into Santo and fully decks him?
Well, that's after he calls her a beautiful woman.
Just as the camera moves away.
So, and now we have the next installment of The Olden Days, Episode 3, Front Bottom's Iron Fist. Now, a lot of this was featured in the Olden Days movie. I guess I'll call it a movie or the special. But I noticed that there was one joke that was cut.
Oh, which
from
was
the
it?
actual, yeah.
Can someone explain that
No,
Irish convict joke to me? I don't get it.
So everything, well, yeah, everything was fine. Like the bread roll, wearing, on the head joke, stupid hat day. That was all fine. It was right towards the very end. It was the last, I think it was 20 seconds of it, where it was another, it was a throwback to, play school auditions. And Front Bottom goes, well, he's about to audition for All the Rivers Run.
And he's a dead
Why would they
cert.
cut that?
Which
Is that
stars-
a rights issue or?
No, I've got no idea. But there was a major ribbing towards John Waters again.
Yeah. Maybe there was some sensitivity
Possibly.
there. Maybe they
silly.
just didn't get the permission. I don't know. Did they need
Not to
permission
say the name of another show. Maybe they felt that it
Or if-
wouldn't have longevity if you're talking about a DVD release. Is that weird? That's what we're talking about, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Because it wasn't released on the VHS nor the DVD or the
Yeah.
iTunes.
whereas the most of the olden days is just brilliant
Yeah.
and timeless, really.
Yeah, because Front Bottom's talking to Hatstrap, and that's where he mentions about All the Rivers Run. So I just thought, oh, okay, this is a new bit. Well, old new bit.
Overall, though, John Waters would have had to have given permission for the release of the DVD, the video, wouldn't he,
They came
to
up
be a
with-
part of it, or not?
Fair dealing. They're only using a very small amount of it.
No, I mean, like, his whole image is obviously in the show in the olden days as part of Rush footage. So would have he had to have said that's okay?
All the Rivers
And all the
Run
actors,
was in
really?
1983 is when it. Yeah, I remember it very, very slightly because, you know, I was in year one in 1983, but I remember it being on. I remember watching it. So, you know, it's hardly a topical reference in 1992, but also, like, you know, the stars of Rush come on the Late Show, so they obviously weren't that bothered by it. But anyway, yeah, it's weird. I don't know why it was removed from the video and DVD release, but
Yeah, it was during
weird.
the IRA was it was a joke that we said at school. Yeah, I remember this joke. It was when the IRA bombings were still happening. I remember this joke was being said at school. It was basically, instead of a stagecoach, it was a car. So yeah, that old joke.
To use the Late Show parlance, we are flummoxed.
Yeah. But can we just go back to this Irish convict joke? All right, so there's a Cobb and Co coach, and he gets his lips burnt on the exhaust
pipe.
What does that mean? I don't get it.
Trying to blow it up.
Oh.
By blowing into the exhaust pipe.
Oh, I'm so stupid.
There we go. Sarah, you will sleep so much better tonight after all the news and anguish. I was even allowed to stay up late to watch it.
But it's a joke. It's a joke that doesn't work because it's being used on a stagecoach that doesn't have a tailpipe. So yes, obviously, 100 years from now, they'll be pissing themselves.
Basically, whenever there's an Irish joke in comedy, the punchline is the Irish person is stupid. That's the punchline.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
They don't really work, to be fair.
All the Rivers Run 1 and 2 are available on Crawford's DVD's website. So.
Yeah, it was really popular program.
I just have to say that Governor...
with the stupid hat. That is a very stupid hat,
I have to say that Governor Frontbottom looks like the quality
hat
street soldier, don't you think, in this get-up?
Stupid and tall, just the way he likes them. So straight after Olden Days, we have Tony educating fans on how to entertain people at home during the Olympics. So this is where the good old Lapland comes in.
But before you get to that, question 347 for when you get these guys on the podcast, why did it say muckraking on stage, forcing Tony to explain that this is not actually muckraking?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, cool. I just want to know, just in the spirit of dealing with absolutely everything in the episode.
I'll shoot Working Dog an email.
I think that was just a technical gaffe. Yeah, they played the wrong skill.
Maybe Tony just never agreed with it being part of muckraking, so he thought, we're live on air, I'm going to say, this is not muckraking, and now.
Well, see, I think this might have originally been sort of a muckraking sketch because it does feature Mick and Jason and celebrity stooge Philip Brady. I mean, yeah, it is sort of weird that Tony is essentially hosting the segment.
So you had Mick, Darren, Jason, Philip Brady.
It was hilarious though that he introduces it in his karate costume from the previous sketch and then goes, "Look out! You'll see my devastating skills, so be on your guard."
Yeah, who couldn't make the filming?
Darren? Who is Darren? Is Darren Bill Hannon or something? I think he was a comedian in Melbourne in the 90s. I think that was his name. I don't know. That's my guess. If anyone knows, let us know.
Yeah, I couldn't work it out either. He doesn't seem to be credited looking through the credits.
So yeah, they wore their hats being US, Germany, Russia, and Mika's Lapland. Everyone hates Lapland.
They don't have a flag because they're not a real country.
Which is just the word Lapland.
And to keep everyone refreshed, they had fridges full of beer, including the old
Darwin Stubby.
Yes, that's it. The Darwin Stubby, indeed.
Can you still get the Darwin Stubby?
You can still get them. I don't know that you can get them outside Darwin though, but they still have them.
Yeah, I didn't know this was a thing until I had to look up NT Draft.
But from a production point of view, I love the fact that they convinced the ABC to buy all of the beer that they needed to fill 2 fridges with beer.
I am actually diverting that question and going to say, was any of it homebrew? Probably just like all that Foster's did actually on the ABC budget. Wonder who did actually drink that.
But this, my friend and I always used to laugh at this sketch because it had 3 fridges. We would just go 3 fridges. Who has 3 fridges? And like,
It's kind of obvious that the one that they get the Darwin stubby out of has come out of someone's shed. It's an old banger.
Can I just say that I grew up in a house that had 3 fridges, and 2 of them were entirely dedicated to alcohol. So, you know,
Yeah,
So
they're
we
like
had
a
3 fridges.
garage fridge or something.
They weren't. They were one of them was in the kitchen. That was a sensible fridge that had food in it. The other one
But they weren't
shed,
in
which
the
was
kitchen,
entirely
I'm
full
sure.
of my dad's beer. And then there was another one under the carport which had
Now
more
that we
of my
approach
dad's
50, Nikki, how many fridges
So-
do we have? 5?
And there's a great line in that section from Mick. Sorry, I told you before. Philip Brady does not drink light beer.
I love Philip Brady. Unlike how I didn't like Jimmy Hannon, I've got the total opposite for Philip Brady. I think he brings so much to it. He's quite funny.
We have our old mate Bruce McAvaney back introducing the musical Pistake, which is Amigos para Siempre, with Jane as Sarah Brightman and Santo as Jose Carreras. And I can't even do my Spanish properly.
Jane's brilliant. Jane's brilliant as Sarah Brightman, because what I remember about Sarah Brightman was her extraordinarily sort of popping out eyes, and Jane really gets the Sarah Brightman look and the way that she moved in that really weird sort of mysterious eye poppy way. So she's really good in this.
Yeah, definitely. You can hear her singing. But I
Yeah.
don't think I
Yeah.
fully appreciated this joke until like this year when they released all that theatre on YouTube and stuff to get engaged with it again. And they had the Phantom of the Opera, the one at the Royal Albert Hall. Like, I can't remember what it was, but it was awkward at the end when Sarah Brightman comes on and Andrew Lloyd Webber comes over and gives her this big hug, and you're going, what is the story here? Like, and so now
Olympic.
Ex-wife, ex-husband and wife.
yeah,
they were.
exactly. So I fully appreciate this song a bit more now.
It also helps having that introduction by Rob as Bruce McAvaney there. I feel like it's doing a bit of the heavy lifting because, yeah, Rob does have to say, Sarah and Andrew are an item.
Yeah.
Like you wouldn't have gotten the Joker without that intro there, I think.
Although there's something about Amigos line was always funny.
And Beso Men Mucho means pretty much the same.
Did anyone notice in this sketch that they're singing and sort of in the background there are various lit up buildings, and I think one of them's Flinders Street Station.
Oh, probably. Or Parliament. They always go to those classic daggy buildings.
I thought I might just bring in a bit of memorabilia. I've got the song that Something About Amigos was parodying on compact disc maxi single.
They're paying us to
Not on
sing
tape.
this
Yeah.
together.
In the
we've got that too.
In the
We've got
cardboard
that.
cover. Now I must admit this was an op shop find, but I couldn't pass it up, especially with on the cover, because for some reason they've got photos of Jose Carreras and Sarah Brightman, but they're in separate boxes. You would think for something that's called Friends for Life, they might find a photo of both of them
They're
being
in
in the
the
same
video.
room.
Done a
They
photo shoot
couldn't say
together.
Olympics.
And
There's a music video.
CD single.
Yeah, there's a music video. There.
And the other thing is that it's titled Andrew Lloyd Webber's Amigos para Siempre. So, and Andrew's being a bit egotistical there.
So next bit is Countdown Classics with Tom and Jane, and the focus is on the audience, such as dancing to Rod Stewart wearing a footy jersey and holding tinsel. So that is a definite dance floor dance appearance. And this one, which I absolutely love. I wonder if this guy's still around, but the audience member just chiming in, Michael Merislade from Mooney Ponds. He wants more Kiss
He
music.
should have his own T-shirt.
And he's a Kiss fan as
He was
well.
dealt with quite well. You really, Molly dealt with him really well.
Michael Merislade, feel free to reach out. If you're still in Mooney Ponds, even better. Now, there's a bunch of girls that are invited to sit on lounge with Molly, which end up being a little bit awkward, but that was like a clip from the Countdown episode 100, which they highlighted last week. And then there was also Jane's tip on how to get your hands on TV, which was to stand a certain distance away from the camera and just put your hands up really high, and yeah, you've got it. The Linda George audience looked thrilled. and the Max Merritt audience looked thrilled too. And Daryl Braithwaite gets pulled down by the audience member.
Never shake hands.
I just want to add that I would never want to sit next to Tom Gleisner on public transport because I wouldn't invade my seat.
Yeah, I was going to say, if the material was put together well, his legs weren't.
I thought this segment of Countdown Classics was really, the material that Jane and Tom had was really good. It was sort of
flares. Blame the flares.
A bit better than the other two episodes. Yep. It was just really kind of put together quite well. Even though we did have Tom's epic man spread on the beanbag.
I want to go for the comic effect because otherwise, that's pretty intense. But as we were saying before, maybe it was another one of those things. So Jane and Tommy's knees were rubbing, maybe it was another sign in the deception.
So we're developing a late show conspiracy theory here about Jane and Tom, that it was totally planned. We've been in lockdown too long, I think.
I think we need to know if it was intentional. Like, was he sitting down going, I'm just going to spread a little bit more just for the comic effect? Or was that just the way he would sit on a beanbag? Because it's all sorts of wrong.
All right. So next is Shit Scared with Rob trying to jump a ramp on his stunt cycle while blindfolded. Now, this is the fantastic one because this has got the famous Hulk Hogan reference, as well as I'd say that the stunt headquarters, the office being the ABC offices because of the Das Kapital poster in the background.
And there's a picture of Max Gillies as well, I think. Yeah, it's a bit hard to see, but I'm pretty sure it's Max Gillies anyway.
So, yeah, and this Shit Scared's featured on the DVD release. And also, not to forget, there's another word that he wasn't sure how to spell, which was dangerous, and might have had a silent J in it.
Yeah, for some reason, he can't hear, see, or spell the word dangerous, but he can say.
It's a weird disability, isn't it?
That's the classic quote that we all said.
I don't have the brown underpants on for nothing.
Yeah, and it's got the Mr. Squiggle thing, which is so clever.
It unfortunately has a word in it that you just would not put in a sketch these days.
Mick has been medically diagnosed as an insert there. Yeah.
Right.
You do that joke differently these days with a different word.
But notwithstanding that, I wrote down that this was, again, I made three, in my notes, there were 3 moments of true champagne comedy, and this Shit Scared was one of them. Yeah, it was really, really good.
I love this Shit Scared because it's got the first time I ever heard the joke about the brown underpants.
There's also a little thing I like, which is Rob explaining what a stunt cycle is, a motorcycle for stuntmen.
And I love the line about how I can put motorbikes, I can pull them apart and put them together again in my sleeve. Here's what I've done. It just won first prize in a sculpture competition on it. Because it did not look like a motorbike.
The end result was Rob driving through the ramp facing the opposite way while blindfolded.
And then it's also capped off very well by the little text coda on it, saying that he spent, what was it, 2 weeks at the St. Vincent's home for
the Daredevil ward of St. Vincent.
That's right. And then an additional 2 weeks after being visited by Mick.
Now we have a news update with another bow and arrow Barcelona joke again. So, a misfire and blowing up something else. Oh, no. Sorry. He shoots a popcorn salesman in the back.
I think it was intended to go over the cauldron and then hit something and it actually was the motion of it going across and the gas was being lit as it was flying over or something. Everyone thought he missed.
Yeah, that's about the 3rd time they've done a piss take of that arrow, isn't it, in this episode?
It was the big thing out of that ceremony, though. Just it was a big moment. Yeah,
because it was one where people were unsure where the conspiracy of if the arrow went over the cauldron instead. The conspiracy was to fire inside the cauldron, but it appeared that the arrow missed it and went completely over it because you see a bit of light, a flame go past it as it lights up from behind it. So it's on YouTube. Just watch the entire ceremony again. Make your own judgment.
Wow. Why is this not a big conspiracy theory in 2020? Because we did it in 92.
Well, Philip Brady actually had good aim.
Maybe we can distract some flat earthers with this and get them thinking about something that really, is not that important. And
no, it was spoken about in school all the time, and I've gone, who cares? It got lit. Doesn't matter.
Right. Don't ask us for the evidence. Do your own research. That's
awkward.
Yeah, forget that QAnon stuff. Phil Bill Gates and 5G. This is what you need to focus on.
There we go. On Twitter, hashtag the arrow missed. Yeah, so we've got the, other than the Barcelona joke, and there was something about Stan Grant and Aboriginal artwork, which that went directly over my head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, factor.
Yep. So Iraq's swimming team, the coach is now Saddam, and which they cut to Saddam and his mates swimming in water in a river, it looks like. So it was more of a visual gag, which didn't really but again, this one I found fantastic because I didn't realize this until I watched the documentary on the ABC earlier in the year, and that was about the family, the sect. 65 children being rescued.
Yeah. Although he was wobbly. Did you see that? He was really sort of scared when he was about to shit.
Yeah, here we go. Go on, Nikki. You had a problem with this.
This is where I wrote bit off.
What, the incest?
Yeah. But, serious issue at the time. And as we've been saying, good that they didn't steer away from these issues and that they were bringing them to potentially a new audience and letting it be discussed. So, yeah.
And that's what these guys have done so well for so many years across so many TV shows. The panel, what they're doing now with Have You Been Paying Attention? It's taking news to an audience that wouldn't watch the news.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I thought this was another good one where it was, they were sort of dealing with it. I thought it was all right, actually. Because the family really wasn't talked about at all very well, even Julian Assange was in the family or some weird connection there. We weren't in the 90s, we just weren't talking about it. And it was all sort of happening then. They were starting to raid the property up in the Lake Eildon sort of area. So I thought it was bringing it to light, which was good. The funny thing was that they gave the character that Jane played the last name Fidgen, which is the guy who...
Yeah, Robert Fidgen from The Age.
Yeah. Herald's son, I should say.
So Robert Fidgen was the Herald's son, wasn't he? Yeah, and Ross Warner, The Age. Sorry about that. Yeah.
That's just a pure coincidence. And now we have Jason Stevens as Kieran Perkins, winning gold, but that's after the amount of pressure that the media was giving him for not succeeding or not doing well enough. And then Tommy just going into a natural rant about, you think you're too good, you got to do better, blah, blah, blah.
I will come across as the lefty ABC guy here, but again, and I will say the words this time, but Nancy boy is just not something that we would say these days. So I just realized watching this episode just how, I guess, woke I am to this stuff now, which I'm happy about. I'm happy that I watch this and that I cringe when I see that sort of stuff.
No, but it shows how much we've progressed in 30 years that we just do not accept homophobia these days. And yet there was still an awful lot of soft homophobia around at that time, and it was acceptable. So it's good that we're spotting and are annoyed.
The sketch was not particularly successful, but Bruce McAvaney popping his head in at the end saved it.
No. Except for Bruce, yes.
Now, to wrap the next part up was a quick little sketch featuring everyone's favourite author.
Jessica Fletcher.
Yeah.
Murder, She Wrote.
Yeah, Murder, She Wrote meets The Killing Fields.
and that very weird line, an entertaining hour of intrigue and genocide.
I think the only thing good about that was that they used the footage of Jane dressed as Jessica Fletcher crossing those killing fields quite a lot in the little stills that they would put up.
Oh, yeah.
Well, the next part is Commercial Crime Stoppers with Mick and Santo. And we have Kent Bruce in the audience after him being featured in the previous week's episode.
I can appreciate Ken Bruce as well.
So, and they talk about in this segment the Demtel pet trainer.
Yeah, it reminded me quite a lot of the device that Marlon Brando has in The Island of Dr. Moreau, if anyone's had the misfortune to sit through that film.
No, not all of it.
But they had the endorsement of the man in the white coat, Dr. Spencer Silvers. So he's an American vet, and I looked him up, and he's still trading. He's based in Bridgewater in New Jersey.
Hilarious.
What does he promote these days? Is he actually still promoting some sort of dodgy product?
He's still working at the Institute of Piss Week Endorsements?
I like the visual gag with this, with Santo trying to get the dog trained and the garage open.
Yes, and I also love that Jane's dog Jessie features so heavily in this bit. And I think Jessie, the dog, is the funniest part of it. Like, there's this bit where she runs away from Mick when Mick pulls the gun on Jessie and she's like, very good.
Oh, according to the credits, Madonna is dressed by Michael Hirsch. So there's your. It seems every week Michael Hirsch gets a joke credit, and that's this week's one.
Oh, he was probably the bum in the photocopy.
There's question number 350 for them. Who is the bum?
All right, so next part is Tony reads out the telex, and there's a Gareth Evans family court joke again.
Hilarious that he receives a telex, like flashback.
Yeah. Tony's grandmother's Barcelona. This is back to the throws back to the nationalism at the start of the episode. So this was his grandmother's nationalism. So it's pretty much all, I guess, the businesses at the time were saying, hey, we're hunky-dory, we're passionate about the Olympics, trying to cash in on that spirit at least, when, they could be selling vacuum cleaners. Hey, the Olympics won't suck, but we will.
Yeah, I think he was talking about all the Barcelona shows. Steve
Yes.
Izard, Clive James, they all had their own little takes on Barcelona. And this was his grandmother's one. And obviously she didn't think much of it. And the rolling credits were pretty much just as long as the interview. And it was that type of thing that you could just, if you freeze frame it, you'd see all these in-jokes. And they always had these little subliminal messages that were really cool if you just froze your VHS and actually saw all these little messages pop up. So as Prue was saying, the credits are quite amusing.
And Myrtle Woods is great, just sort of being deadpan and just sort of going, no, there's nothing I want to talk about Barcelona. I don't like this, I don't like that. Oh, but I did like this.
So what else is she known for? Because she gets quite a prominent credit at the end.
She plays a lot of Tony's grandmother in the show.
But she...
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Because I figured it wasn't really Tony's grandma, because she'd be in New Zealand if she was still alive.
No, not a real grand.
Woods was on Australian television back in the 60s. I think she worked with Graham Kennedy or at Channel 9 in the 60s and beyond. So she was quite well known, I think, in the Melbourne television scene anyway.
I wonder if she was in a country practice, and therefore she'll be discussed in the country podcast, whatever that's called. It's just started. Hello to Melanie Tate, the host of that show.
Yes. Yeah, there we go. Give us a plug as well. There we go.
I must say the set is beautiful behind Tony and Grandma, with the smoked glass bricks that were very in of the time, very midday show style.
I saw a thread on Twitter recently about how you knew someone was posh if they had glass bricks in their house. It's like, well, you can't argue with that, actually. Yes.
Well, Nikki, when you worked at Channel 9, you had a wall of those bricks, didn't you? Because occasionally there'd be interview guests on the news who had been invited up to Channel 9 to be, this is my recollection anyway, to be interviewed for the news. And if they didn't want it to look like they were being interviewed at Channel 9, they'd always have the glass bricks behind them.
Win in Rockhampton actually had the best set of glass bricks. They actually had two walls that you could choose which angle you wanted.
That was coming on the midday show with Ray Martin, wasn't it? The day call.
Yes, it was. I remember the glass bricks on that. Yeah, but if you've got a favourite set of glass bricks, do send us an email and tell
Send us a screenshot and we'll go from there.
We'll discuss that next week. Yeah, more.
We can use it as a
there we go.
Zoom background.
Next week, everyone has to have glass bricks in the background on their Zoom.
I don't have glass bricks, but I do have part of the Channel 9 news set from Brisbane Channel 9 in the 1990s, which I have also in our bedroom.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Anyway.
Wow.
Not real knobs on that television.
Which actually was because they had lights behind them, so the lights would shine through and it would glow blue.
Nice.
See, beautiful.
God. Is your place like a museum? You got so much. Oh, that's pretty cool.
There you go.
So real visual gags, or not even a gag, it's just a visual, but I'm holding my phone light behind this perspex with 9 News on it.
No. National 9 News.
I was National 9 News. Does all this get cut out? I love how we're aiming for a 1-hour podcast, but we've been going for 2 hours and we're only 45 minutes into the late show.
I know, right?
You'll never have us back again.
In that case, I won't read out all of the credits from Tony's grandmother's Barcelona, except for the one that I like, which is Transport this mate of Tony's with an Atara.
Yes. All right, so we'll go to the next part, which is the slideshow of fake ads. And this is where it's the Gillespie children joke.
Flee to Malaysia
the
month.
highlight of it being, flee to Malaysia month. Yeah.
And Tony Martin gets to do his best commercial radio, thinking about carpet. There's never been a better time. There's never been a better time to ... kind of voice. Have you ever had to do that sort of thing, Spencer? Like, I don't know you being from any commercial enterprises. It's been mostly ABC and reading radio.
Correct. Yeah, no, I don't know that I've ever read an ad, but if I ever get to, I would hope that it starts with "There's never been a better time." To.
If I come across one, I'll send you one, Spencer.
Okay.
This sequence of ads
All right.
reminded me a lot of those slides you used to get in cinemas at the time, before they'd show the proper ads,
Other than the flee to Malaysia, desperate to lose weight, and you marry the Prince of Wales, which, that's a bit of
that one was a bit low.
Horribly off now.
Yeah. Yep. And Baghdad self-storage.
Yeah.
I liked that one.
Yeah.
I don't know why we deny all knowledge. I mean, I think once you've got comfortable with the fact that there are jokes about the Iraq War, then you can see the humor in that. And I did write that down as, that's a good gag.
You might also notice that there's a tattoo on the arm of the large woman in the middle slide that says, "I heart Steve Saddle." That's a little in-joke that's been put in there by Steve, who's a graphic designer, according to the credits.
That reminds me of the Kim rules on the photo of Santo and Rob that was in TV Week, which I scanned and put on my website. And subsequently, quite a few people have copied that image and saved it and used it as avatars. But I can tell it's the copy that I scanned because it still says Kim rules on Santo's hand. I had a bit of a crush on Santo, so obviously
That's
that was
great.
just me being 15 years old. But if you ever see that
yours.
photo and you see Kim rules on his hand, then counterfeit.
So, simply Google it and you'll find it. Now we have, speaking of which, Graham and the Colonel. Yeah, and there was no applause, which was they obviously forgot to flash the
Even when
applause
they
light.
gave about 7 hints to give them applause, there was none. But still a 10 out of 10 audience.
And it killed. They even said that they needed the applause to start the segment because they go, hey, the applause that equals the opening ceremony of the Olympics.
Maybe that's why they had to introduce the song eventually, the opening.
But it seems like that
credits for
Rob
that
was
segment.
losing it. Sorry, not Rob. Graham was losing it all the way
really,
through.
really loose performance from Rob in this one.
At the very start.
I mean,
I do love it when they linger at the scene of the crime, as it were, with that sort of.
I think Graham and the Colonel is better when they go off whatever script they've written and they just go freeform, because that's when either fails spectacularly and that's often quite funny, or they do something really brilliant. And so, again, I wouldn't want to be whoever was running the auto cue.
Oh, I was just going to say that Graham and the Colonel is one of those things that's sort of hard to talk about because the jokes are either a little bit lame or whatever, but it was a wild segment of the show. It really was like, wow, this is like flying by the seat of your pants. And I think it was a really exciting, like, okay, Graham and the Colonel's coming up. What's going to happen now? No one knows, not even the cast, not even Santo. Sometimes you can see this look of terror on Santo's face.
There were some silly gags that actually made me chuckle, just about the boats for 2 people, and they made the reference to a paddle boat and how they went really fast. They had to return it within the hour, and that's why they won the gold. It's just silly things like that actually are quite funny. And then the diving. They never once saw a creepy crawly or a man with a big
and then
pole
Santo
sticking
says,
off
"Who put the person putting the chlorine in?" And that's when Rob says, "You should have stopped that gag at the pole."
But they were flummoxed. They were definitely flummoxed throughout this one.
It's so loose, isn't it? It really could only have worked at the end of the show for them to be relaxed enough, and for the audience, like it's just the perfect almost end to the show. How they deliver it.
Yeah, and the Colonel was disappointed that there was only gold, silver, and bronze, but there was no encouragement award.
Which is now so prevalent in all school sports. I'm just going to say that. There's so many bloody 4th place ribbons. I'm sick of it.
Yeah, there was a few references to red faces in this episode, wasn't there? And
to get them off.
to actually, and it was around the time that they showed.
Oh, it was
Jason's
Jason
appearance
who was
on
on it,
Red
yeah.
Faces, was it? Matt, you're the expert on Hey Hey.
Yeah, the Penguins, yeah.
When he was the Penguin.
And they spoke about the Olympic theme song, Amigos para Siempre, and the Colonel saying that it was stolen from Renee and Renato.
I think you have to be the certain-
And was it Renee who was wearing the quality velour?
Yeah.
Yes.
It was pretty special.
I'm still flummoxed how that song became a hit.
My
So
grandmother bought it.
It's terrible.
I mean, that era of music, though, the charts had an awful lot of variety of songs for all sorts of different ages and tastes. And these days, what's in the charts is such a narrow sort of music. But back then, you know, you had novelty songs, you had easy listening, you had country music occasionally, as well as the full range of popular styles. And it was just a different time.
Now we have the closing credits, which, and this is your forte, Daniel. The bad reviews.
Well, actually, we've skipped a little bit ahead because we've got the closing
Reviews.
segment where Tony mentions a bad review from Robert Fidget in the Herald Sun. I haven't been able to find the full review, but it is featured in the stills gallery on the Champagne Edition DVD. So yeah, the headline is "Laughs Are Not on the DGen," and the excerpt goes, "The writing is simply not good enough for a 22-week show. Truth is, we're only up to week 2, and already there's buckets of the cheap, easy, pooper scooper, horse droppings, steaming piles of number 2's rubbish that went out with the vaudeville. If the DGen are not up to providing the material, then for heaven's sake, dig deeper into the money bag and get some more writers. I'll stick with it, but more out of duty than desire. In the meantime, Kits and Fahey on Mondays is so far in
That
front
is
of the
not
DGen
true.
Saturday show,
Kits and
it's not
Fahey-
funny."
And I don't, no disrespect to Gene Kitson and Marianne Faye because they're both amazing, but Kitson Faye was a stinker. It was a massive
Dreadful program, and it only, I think they did their 6 episodes and they never came back. You know, it was a
Yeah.
stinker. Yeah.
And also, what a shocking criticism! Like, get some more writers. Like, oh, righto, like Monty Python didn't need any more writers. What insane! Like, they were not.
Like there's only 7 of them already. You would
It
think.
was not a writers' room program. It's
That's
insane.
Well, that
I'm just amazed at how many synonyms Robert Fidgen.
Had for shit.
Yeah, thank you for finishing my brain fade there.
it's getting late, that's for sure. We've been doing this for 2 hours. So, yeah. All right. And, well, the point that they, to try and get revenge on Mr. Fidgen was that pointing out that he also drew cartoons for the paper.
For TV.
And they showed one of Stan
Yeah.
Grant.
Well, for TV,
TV
Week.
Week, yeah. And they showed where Stan Grant, at the time, he was doing the current affairs show on 7 Real Life. And the quote, "She went that away," being Yana Went.
Very good.
Yeah.
And that's when Tony got fired up. Like, he was
So
getting angry.
Quite rightly given.
He called him a
Yeah.
condescending old fart in polyester slacks.
Deserved. Totally deserved.
Can't get much worse than
That's
that.
when they said, "Oh, send us in the worst Robert Fidgen cartoon."
I love the way he's pointing out that they're all sort of
Yeah.
non-distinct images. Like, who is this a caricature of? No one knows.
Well, Stan Grant looks like Daryl Summers, and yeah.
I can't see it on here, but I have a TV Week that has a Robert Fidgen cartoon, but it's basically to illustrate a columnist's view. So it's something about vote 1 for free TV speech. It's not funny. If you don't
They
actually
were
read the
bad.
whole thing, you have no idea what it's
They were on the
about,
money
so-
then. They were on the money by
Yeah.
saying that he's not funny.
Well, there's
It's not
another
funny.
one which is 2 indistinct people talking to each other. One says, "What would you call a murdered journalist?" and the other one answers, "Justifiable
What?
homicide."
Oh my
Wow.
God.
I mean,
It's a
you know, that was like people sort of famously hate lawyers and real estate agents and journalists. I mean, that's basically the joke, but except it's not funny, you know. Yeah.
At all.
28 years later, yeah.
I would have preferred an
know what the
Irish
punchline to
joke
that
instead of
is.
that stuff.
They're stupid. Irish are stupid. Lol.
But they also had the worst album covers, and I've got the list here of what they showed. The Hawking Brothers, Max Miller, the Cheeky Chappie, and one which I'm a sucker for, Indecent Obsession, Spoken Words.
I had that album. I won it on a radio competition.
Wow.
The cheeky chappy.
No. Well, I mean, Indecent Obsession could have linked in with that very easily. Yes.
And again, Indecent Obsession are available on Spotify, but not the album Spoken Words, which is the one that's highlighted there. Again, like, does anybody know what the actual story is about the album cover? Is that an actual thing?
Oh, it's a really horrible photo.
That's right.
Like,
That was the style at the time, wasn't it?
no, wasn't it that it had to be recalled or the album cover had to be changed? Or something?
I don't know.
Am I
Why?
dreaming this?
Send a tweet about.
Oh.
Is it another conspiracy theory?
My indecent knowledge is
Oh, hold on. There's two albums.
I'm
Oh,
not
no, here
sure.
we go. There's one that's an Australian one, and then there's an international cover, which is them standing there black and white or silhouette type thing.
Oh my God,
Yeah.
it's with the Beatles all over again.
Oh, well, it's Molly Meldrum was in charge of them.
Are they without
Well-
shoes on the cover, which would mean they're all dead now? Yeah.
Dead.
Ah.
Well, Spoken Words, the Australian cover, they had them standing in the beach. You can't see their feet. And the international cover they look like a really cheesy boy band in the international cover. Like, kind of, they look semi-serious. And I know too much about
They
Indecent
were a
Obsession.
very
Shut up.
boy band, so you got that right.
It's really weird that Spoken Words isn't available digitally
They
because
were
it does have
short.
a couple of big hits on it.
Yeah, Say Goodbye. Yeah, that's my favourite.
They didn't laugh.
And
Yes.
Tell Me Something.
Yeah, because they have Indio on Spotify. Again, third time I'm saying too much. And the other one
This-
is David.
The whole. Oh, sorry.
No,
go on,
no,
Max.
please, Spencer, please go.
No, the whole record cover thing nearly didn't happen. Like, so Jane actually had to remind Tony to do that. Otherwise,
Yeah.
it looked like he was going to wrap it
Because he
up.
was so fired up, he could have kept talking.
Yeah, he was. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, they had to push him along. And David Graves, Something Old, Something New. Anyway, that doesn't mean too much now. That's pretty much it. And then there was the closing credits, and straight afterwards, at the end of it, they had Ken Bruce plugging the audience tickets.
But not in Brisbane.
Oh, yes.
Or Adelaide.
Yeah.
Or Sydney. Added bonus.
I've never seen that before.
We never did
But
until...
hashtag Brisbane Life. We got to go and see Ugly Dave Gray hosting Blankety Blanks not Blankety Blanks, Play Your Cards Right at Channel 7 in Brisbane, but we couldn't go to the Late Show. And I did see Ugly Dave Gray hosting Play Your Cards Right at Channel 7 in Brisbane. And that's going to be the subject of my new podcast. No, I'm kidding.
That's it.
All right,
Yeah, that's
that's
pretty
it.
much it. So, if you've got anything else to add, speak up now. Forever hold your peace.
An hour and a half ago, I ordered pizza, and I keep getting notifications saying, phone the restaurant to find out what the delay is. It's like, don't you know I'm on a podcast? That's all I've got to say. So I can finally phone the restaurant.
There you go, Nikki. You can get your pizza now. So sorry for the hold
Thank
up.
you, everyone. This has been fun.
Now, Spencer and Nikki, do you have anything to plug that you're doing right now?
I'll hand over my plugging time to Nikki. What is giveit.org.au, Nikki?
Well, I'll take the work plug. Thank you, Kat. If you have anything in your house that you don't need anymore, great quality that you would love to pass on to somebody in need in your community, someone you haven't met before, but someone you know that will use that mobile phone that's sitting in your drawer because you've upgraded in your new plan. Someone you know who's got a pram sitting under the stairs who doesn't need it anymore, someone who's moved from a single bed into, the teenagers grown up, they're now in the queen bed. There will be somebody near you that you can make a difference in the world by donating it. So jump online, giveit.org.au, givit.org.au. You can have a look at the stories requested around the country of items that are needed right now. And yeah, it feels great to give. So here's your chance.
Can I donate a Perspex Channel 9 News television
No, it's
from the
fine.
90s?
You're not
No.
giving that away.
Only if somebody wants
That's
it.
true.
Do you accept worn out VHS tapes of the Late Show?
If anybody has a player to play the one anymore, that might be more the trick.
Nice. And you're a nationwide charity organisation, correct?
Across Australia, yes. So anywhere you are in Australia, and you might connect with a request that's actually in Darwin or Alice Springs or Broome. So wherever you are, jump on, have a look. Yeah.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you very much, Nikki and Spencer. And also thank you very much, Daniel, Prue, Alison, and Kim. And that's pretty much episode 3 of the Champagne Comedy Podcast. So please, subscribe. Shoot us an email, champagnelateshow@gmail.com or Twitter, TLS Champagne, or even visit the website champagnecomedy.com. And give us a shout out, or let us know what you think if we do waffle on for too long or we don't tell enough stories. So thank you very much for listening. See you next episode.
Cheers, everyone.
See ya.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Champagne Comedy Podcast, created by fans for the fans. For more information on this podcast, please visit champagnecomedy.com. Produced by Matt Fulton Productions, mattfulton.com.au.